up your YouTube, search for Stukeley Meadows, watch on your big screen.
Or another device if you're at home.
Get yourself comfy, this could take a while. What a happy scene. Something new every day for your long-term memory. This is so exciting, it is nearly time for a Stukeley assembly. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday reading assembly. For each other we, every day we, to improve we, together we will. Every single Stukeley day we focus on. Our Stukeley motto is, our Stukeley curriculum is, our Stukeley plan for home learning is, and 4 words that make the magic happen. Yes, now, I did warn you, I did tell you that the home learning thing was going to come at us. Yeah, that's the new part of our strap lines. That's the new part of our assembly start. I'm going to say our Stukeley plan for home learning is, and you'll say read, write, quiz, spell, calculate. They're the 5, normally we have 6, don't we, at Stukeley? They're the 5 big things that we expect everyone to do every week. Right, welcome everyone. It's Wednesday reading. You'll notice I'm not in the garage. Right now, while I'm recording this assembly, because I do the assemblies the day before, right now I'm in school, and when I've got meetings, I've got 2 meetings later, and by the time I get into the garage, it will be far too late. So I'm having to do the assembly in here, but I've remembered the reading jacket. Yes! I've remembered the reading jacket. So it's reading assembly, it's Wednesday, we've got loads to get in today, I'm very excited, also starting a brand new book. But before we do any of that, let us talk about our author of the moment, and that man is called Roald Dahl. I'm not even going to tell you to pause the video. I want you to think about what you know about Roald Dahl. Think about when he was born, think about jobs that he did, think about books that he wrote, think about his height, think about where he did his writing. Think about all those things. Think. Right, now, don't tell us. Keep them in your head, keep them in your memory, get them in your long-term memory. Right, last week we finished SEO Trot. Really enjoyed that one. Thank you for being a part of it with me. I then gave you the challenge to think of the next book. I gave you all the challenge. Thank you to every class that gave me their ideas. Not everybody did. Come on every class at Stukeley, that would have helped. Anyway, thank you those that did. I'm now going to run off. I'm going to get the list, and I'm going to read you the list of everyone's ideas before I tell you what we're actually going to read this time. See you in a bit. Whew, that took quite a bit of finding. Anyway, I found my list. Found my list of ideas. Right, this is what you all suggested we could read. Bad Dad, Folk in the Faraway Tree, Evil Dinner Ladies, Harry Potter, The Creakers, Knights and Bikes, World's Worst Teachers, World's Worst Children, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, How to Train Your Dragon, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, My Brother's a Superhero, Magic Finger, George's Marvellous Medicine, Mr. Nobody's Eyes, Treehouse Story, Stig of the Dump. They were some great ideas, and I know lots of you found it hard to think of a book that would be for foundation stage all the way up to year 6. In fact, Mrs. Campbell had this crazy idea that I could read 7 different books every single week, read a few chapters of 7 different books, and then put them at the bottom of the screen, and then you could click the book that you... I mean, come on, Mrs. Camp. Only joking. It was kind of my idea, and Mrs. Campbell rolled her eyes. Anyway, thanks for your ideas. I don't want to upset anyone because I know you thought hard about them, but I've decided to go for George's Marvellous Medicine. So if you were in Oak class and you thought of that, thank you. It's a great idea. We're going to read George's Marvellous Medicine, mainly because I read the story a few years ago and I really enjoyed it. Secondly, because it's a Roald Dahl story, and at the moment we're kind of in the Roald Dahl zone. We're enjoying Roald Dahl's work. Thirdly, not a lot of people know this. When I was a small child, my dad used to call me George. Yeah, he still does actually. When I ring him up, he says, "Hiya, George." So it's kind of a fond memory there. Anyway, we're going to go for George's Marvellous Medicine, which is down here. It's on AR. So just like SEO Trot, you could go on and do a quiz on this. Might mix your reading age up a little bit, but that's fine. It's a level 4, so it's pretty accessible for everyone. We're going to crack on now. Roald Dahl, George's Marvellous Medicine, and I'll show you the pictures we go along. So I need to get my voices right. I need to make sure I've got my George voice and I've got my grandma voice, because let's be honest, Mr. Hoppy and Miss Silver, I mean, their accents went all over the shop from start to finish, didn't they? Okay, here we go. Chapter 1, Grandma. "I'm going shopping in the village," George's mother said to George on Saturday morning. "So be a good boy and don't get up to mischief." This was a silly thing to say to a small boy at any time. It immediately made George wonder what sort of mischief he could get up to. And don't forget to give Grandma her medicine at 11 o'clock, George's mother said. Then out she went, closing the back door behind her. Grandma, who was dozing in her chair by the window, opened one little wicked eye and said, "Now, you heard what your mother said, George. Don't forget my medicine." "No, Grandma," George said. "And just try to behave yourself for once while your mother's gone out." "Yes, Grandma," George said. George was bored to tears. He didn't have a brother or a sister. His father was a farmer, and the farm they lived on was miles away from anywhere, so there were never, ever any children to play with. George was tired of staring at pigs and hens and cows and sheep. He was especially tired of having to live in the same house as that grisly old grunion of a grandma. Looking after her all by himself was hardly the most exciting way to spend a Saturday morning while his mum went to the shops. You can make me a nice cup of tea for a start," Grandma said to George. "That'll keep you out of mischief for a few minutes." "Yes, Grandma," George said. George could not help disliking Grandma. She was a selfish, grumpy old woman. She had pale brown teeth and a small, puckered-up mouth like a dog's bottom. How much sugar in your tea today, Grandma?" George asked her. "1 spoon," she replied, "and no milk." Most grandmothers are lovely, kind and helpful old ladies. But not George's grandma. She spent all day and every day sitting in her chair by the window, and she was always complaining, grousing, grouching, grumbling and griping about somebody or something or other. Never once, even on her best days, had she smiled at George. Never. And she never said, "How are you this morning, George?" And she never said, "Oh, why don't we play a game of snakes and ladders?" Or she never said, "How was your school today?" She did not seem to care about other people. She only cared about herself. She was a miserable old grouch. George went into the kitchen and made Grandma a cup of tea with a tea bag. He put 1 spoon of sugar into it and no milk. He stirred the sugar well and carried the cup into the living room. Grandma sipped the tea.
"It's not sweet enough," she said. "Go and put more sugar in."
George took the cup back into the kitchen, put in another spoon of sugar, and he stirred it again carefully for his grandma.
"Where's the saucer?"
said Grandma when he brought it back in.
"I won't have a cup without a saucer."
George went and fetched her a saucer.
And what about the teaspoon?"
I've stirred it for you, Grandma. I've stirred it for you really well.
"I'll stir my own tea, thank you very much," she said. "Fetch me a teaspoon."
George fetched her a teaspoon. Now, when George's mother or father were home, Grandma never spoke to George like this. It was only when she was on her own with him that she began treating him badly.
"You know what's the matter with you?"
the old woman said, staring at George over the top of her teacup.
"You're growing too fast. Boys who grow too fast become stupid and lazy."
But I can't help it if I'm growing fast, Grandma, said George.
"Of course you can," she snapped. "Growing is a nasty, childish habit."
"But we have to grow, Grandma. If we didn't grow, we'd never be grown-ups."
"Rubbish, boy, rubbish," she said. "Look at me. Am I growing? Certainly not."
"But you did once, Grandma."
"Only very little,"
said the old woman.
"I gave up growing when I was extremely small, along with all the other nasty childish habits, like laziness and disobedience and greed and sloppiness and untidiness and stupidity." "You haven't given up any of those things, George," she said.
I'm still only a little boy, Grandma."
"You're 8 years old," she snorted. "That's old enough to know better. If you don't stop growing soon, it will be too late."
Too late for what, Grandma?"
"It's ridiculous," she said. "You're nearly as tall as me already."
George took a good look at Grandma. She certainly was a very tiny person. Her legs were so short, she had to have a footstool to put her feet on, and her head only came halfway up the back of the armchair. "Daddy says it's fine for a man to be tall," said George.
"Don't listen to your daddy," Grandma said. "Listen to me."
"But how do I stop myself growing?" George asked.
"Eat less chocolate," Grandma said.
Does chocolate make you grow?"
"It makes you grow the wrong way," snapped Grandma. "Up instead of down."
Grandma sipped some tea, but never took her eyes off of the little boy who stood in front of her.
"Never grow up, always grow down."
"Yes, Grandma."
"And stop eating chocolate, eat cabbage instead."
"Yes, Grandma." "Oh, no, cabbage. I don't like cabbage," said George.
"It's not what you like or you don't like," Grandma snapped. "It's what's good for you that counts. From now on, you must eat cabbage 3 times a day. Mountains of cabbage. And if it's got caterpillars, so much better."
"Caterpillars give you brains?" said George, wondering what Grandma was going to say next.
"Oh, yes, they do, George."
George remembered that Grandma had said this sometime before. "Mummy washes them down the sink, though," said George.
"Mummy's as stupid as you are," snarled Grandma. "Cabbage doesn't taste of anything without a few caterpillars in it. Slugs too."
"Not slugs," said George.
"Whenever I see a live slug on a piece of lettuce, I gobble it up quick before it gets away. Delicious." She squeezed her lips
together so tight that her mouth became a tiny wrinkled hole.
Delicious, she said again. Worms and slugs and beetly bugs. You don't know what's good for you, George.
You're joking, Grandma, you're joking, he pleaded.
I never joke, she said. Beetles are perhaps the best of all. They go crunch.
Grandma, that's horrible. The old hag grinned, showing those pale brown teeth.
Sometimes, if you're lucky, you get a beetle inside a stick of celery. That's what I like.
Grandma, how could you?
You find all sorts of nice things in a stick of celery. Sometimes it's earwigs.
I don't want to hear about it, said George.
A big fat earwig is very tasty,
Grandma said, licking her lips.
But you've got to be quick, because when you put one of those in your mouth, it's got a pair of sharp nippers, and it grabs your tongue, and it never lets go. So you've got to bite the earwig first, before it bites you, George.
George started edging towards the door. He wanted to get as far away as possible.
You're trying to get away from me, aren't you, George? She said,
pointing a finger straight at George's face. Little George stood by the door, staring at the old hag in the chair. She stared back at him. Oh, I've hurt my neck.
Could it be? Could it be?
Grandma said to herself. Could it be? Wondered George. What could it be? He'd always thought that witches were only in fairy tales, but now he was not so sure.
Could it be, George? In fact, come closer to me, little boy. Come closer to me, little George. She beckoned him close with a horny finger. Come closer to me, and I will tell you secrets.
George didn't move. Grandma didn't move either.
I know a great many secrets, she said.
And suddenly she smiled. It was an icy, thin smile, the kind that a snake might smile just before it bites you.
Come over here to Grandma, and she'll whisper secrets to you, George.
George took a step backwards, edging closer to the door.
You mustn't be frightened of your old grandma.
George took another step backwards.
Some of us, she said.
And all at once she was leaning forwards in her chair.
Some of us have magic powers that can twist the creatures of this earth into wondrous shapes.
A tingle of electricity flashed down George's spine. He began to feel frightened.
Some of us,
the old woman went on,
have fire in our tongues and sparks in our bellies and wizardry in the tips of our fingers.
Some of us know secrets that would make your hair stand up on end and your eyes pop out of their sockets. George wanted to run away, but his feet seemed stuck to the floor.
We know how to make your fingernails drop off and teeth grow out of your fingers instead.
George began to tremble. It was her face that frightened him most of all. The frosty smile, the brilliant, unblinking eyes.
We know how to have you wake up in the morning with a tail coming out from behind you.
Grandma! He cried. Please stop!
We know secrets, my dear, about dark places where dark things live and squirm and slither all over each other.
George made a dash for the door.
It doesn't matter how far you run, he heard her saying. You will never get away.
George ran into the kitchen and slammed the door behind him. Right, that was chapter 1. Now the next chapter's called The Marvellous Plan. So what have we seen so far? We've met George's grandma. Her voice actually is hurting my neck. We've met his grandma. She's not nice. She's got secrets. She loves eating disgusting creatures and beetles and slugs and worms and snails. George is frightened, he doesn't enjoy being with her. She really scares him, he's just escaped to the kitchen, and now he's going to come up with a plan. We'll find out what that plan is next week. Right, next up, cheer, boo, song or silence. Let's check that out straight away.
Will they get to cheer or will they get to boo? With either one there must not be violence. They may well get a song, but it will not last that long. We really hope they do not get silence.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Cheer, Boo, Song or Silence studio. Now behind the curtain today is Mrs. Gavigan, one of our foundation stage team. This is the first time she has ever taken part in Cheer, Boo, Song or Silence, and she is so excited. But what should we... Should we start again? No, we'll keep going. But what will she get? Will she get a cheer, a boo, a song or silence? What do you think Mrs. Gavigan will get? Mrs. Cooper's walking past and she's still looking cross at her triple boo. Anyway, let's find out. Out you come, Mrs. Gavigan! Whoa. Yeah, she's halfway down Wartime Way. Yeah, she's gone. Yeah. Okay. So what happens? Sometimes it doesn't go your way. Let's see what the audience reaction was like to that. Come, Mrs. Gavigan!
Will they get to cheer or will they get to boo? With either one there must not be violence. They may well get a song, but it will not last that long. We really hope they do not get silence.
I always say it, you never know what's going to happen in Cheer, Boo, Song or Silence. It's the luck of the cards. Look forward to seeing who's in that next week. Now remember, Mrs. Cooper's been in it more times than anyone else. 3 times, 3 boos. I'm worried about doing it a 4th time in case she resigns her position, but one time that'll happen, I'm sure. Okay, shout outs. Let's get cracking. First of all, happy birthday to Amy, year 4. We're back in school, Amy. I see you smiling every day I come through your classroom. Have a great day around your friends, and hopefully you'll be able to do a bit more celebrating in a few weeks' time when we can get together with people again. I celebrated Abhishek yesterday for smashing through 3 million words in accelerated reader quizzes. Well, Munaza in his class in year 5 has just joined him. She didn't get a millionaire that long ago, and now she's gone 2 million, multi-millionaire. Well done, Munaza. Also, a shout out to Sebastian in year 6, and I believe his sister in year 2. They have been awarded Huntingdonshire Community Group Lockdown Learners Awards for a great attitude to home learning during the COVID pandemic. So there it is, Lockdown Learners Award. Sebastian got himself one of these, so did his sister. I wonder if anybody else got one. If you did, tell me. What a fantastic award to get for all of your hard work, Sebastian. And we know how hard you've worked on your reading. You've blitzed through 100 quizzes, which is fantastic news. Talking of reading, yesterday I went round school checking on learning logs and AR quizzes. Really pleased to say that nearly every child is reading as much as I would expect them to. Lots of you who didn't do a quiz last week will be doing one this week because you're pacing yourself, you're getting your 20 minutes, half an hour in. Quite a few children who didn't write in their learning logs their 5 times, I know you'll be doing that this week because we want to keep that momentum going. So I've got a note of everyone who's doing brilliantly and a note on people who I need to keep that positive pressure on. Just before we finish, I'm just going to tell you before Most Important 60 Seconds comes on, the Oakleaf Bookshop is open next week. And in the next few Most Important 60 Seconds, in the next few ones, I'm going to share with you things that you might be able to buy when the shop opens. Yeah? Here it is. The most important 60 seconds are coming up now. The most important 60 seconds are coming up now. Okay, the Oakleaf Bookshop has been part of our school for about 4 years. Okay, it hasn't been open for a few months because we've had lockdown and I had to furlough Mr. Jones, but now we're back open next week. I will be telling all of you how much money you've got to spend in the Oakleaf Bookshop. I'll come round to your classrooms this week and tell you. Next week you can start bringing money back in for the bookshop if you want, and then you'll visit it one lunchtime a week to come and buy some bits. You have to buy books, but you can also buy the other bits, and I'm very excited to say that we're going to have badges back in the bookshop. They are 50 pence each. They are 50p each, and I'm going to show you some of the new stock that we've got. Mr. Jones has been working hard on these. In fact, before I show you the badges, let's find out how Mr. Partridge and Mr. Jones feel about the new badges in the bookshop. Here's what they said when I asked them, or told them. Here's how they said.
I'm so excited, I could cry.
This is the best day of my entire life.
Okay, let's have a look at some of the badges. We've gone over a minute, but it's fine. Who doesn't want their own 36 seconds badge? Who doesn't want their own cheer, boo, song or silence badge? Who doesn't want their own who will be triumphant who badge? Who doesn't want their own fire up your laptop badge? Who doesn't want their own phone calls with staff badge? Who does not want their own Coops and the Gang badge? Who doesn't want their own phone calls with staff aftermath badge? And finally, those of you that were part of the Fossums bingo a few weeks ago, do you remember that one of the bingo balls got lost and we had to stick a number 17 on a marble instead? Who remembers that? Well, Mr. Crocker gave me the idea, why don't we make some badges? So, who doesn't want a number 17 marble badge? Now that is a lucky badge. Anyone who buys that, I'm sure you're going to get good luck for the rest of your life. It's a lucky number 17. At the Fossums bingo, we all went crazy, super crazy when that came out. Looking forward to getting these in the bookshop. They're 50p each. Starts next week. Have a great day. See you later.